Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. Another in our series of what's going on in the community. Every once in a while, we get a treat, and today we have just that. We've got Steve Joyner, currently Washington County Commissioner, District 5, and he's here to talk to us a little bit about what is going on in the county. You know, with Hurricane Michael and COVID-19, the various storms that we've had, things are a mess, and sometimes it's just really nice to be able to talk to somebody where the rubber meets the road. In this case, we're going to talk to Steve about monies. We're going to talk about what the county is doing to not just save you money, but to generate more services for fewer dollars. When we come back, we're going to talk to Steve Joyner about all this and more, and we will be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Steve Joyner. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Glad to be here, Paul.
Or normally I would shake your hand, but we're in a different world.
Absolutely. It is a different time, isn't it?
How is COVID-19 affecting your everyday life, if at all?
Well, at my age, it's quite a bit different. I'm a little bit more careful about where I go and what I do and the way I go about doing it, you know, and try to wash my hands as the CDC recommends and wear my mask when I go in a convenience store, public store, you know, where there's going to be a lot of people, and just trying to use common sense, you know, and do.
Yeah, I think having an awareness for the sensitivity of others is important, because sometimes we get kind of complacent, and then I come up against somebody who, you know, they take that 6 foot seriously, and I hey, no harm, no foul, but it's a different world.
It is. You have to be conscious of your other people around you, you know, and take care of them as well as you do yourself, you know. So it's for both of us.
Not that I intended it to happen this way, but this is talking about COVID-19 and health issues. Great segue to talk about the recent changes that you, the County Commission in Washington County, Florida, have made to the availability of health care for your employees. Ballpark, rough number, do you have an idea of how many people work for the county, Steve, under that umbrella?
It's about 180.
Fairly good-sized business in the real world.
Yes, it is. It's a big project to keep health care for all those individuals, and we do a pretty good job at it.
Invariably, when you start talking about health care, everybody has a complaint. Nobody likes to pay co-pays at all. If it was $1, they would complain about it. But recently, you guys were able to make some relatively big changes in your health care plan where you've saved a lot of money. Can you talk a little bit in broad strokes about that?
Absolutely. We got to looking at a health care plan to see what we can do to make it better for the employees and also save the taxpayers money. So we actually come together with United Healthcare and come up with a plan. And in the first year, we actually saved about $500,000. And therefore, you know, that's taxpayers' money that we're looking out for, and actually still bettering the insurance for the employees also. And in the second year, it was $750,000 roughly, and that's a savings to the taxpayers of the county that we can do some other things with, but we still have to provide a good quality health care for the employees. You know, we're looking out after our employees also, and the taxpayers' money in the same sense.
Yeah, so I mean, you got a double whammy there. You've got better health care, more availability of health care, and saving money. Now, one of the sticking points in most business provided, in this case the county provided health care, is that family plan. Generally, relatively inexpensively, you can have the employee covered, but when you add that family, because most employees are men, not being sexist here, it's just typical that's what you're going to have, that when you add the women are more expensive in health care anyway.
Yes.
Then you add the children. So I think that was one of the bigger problems. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in your old plan, when you went to the family plan, man, it was unaffordable, literally.
Right. This plan makes it more affordable for the family, you know, and adding their spouse and their children to the plan, and it helps them in that case where they can buy that for their family also, you know, and have better coverage there.
Yeah, and even myself as a taxpayer, you know, my stance, and I'm sure most taxpayers watching this right now, what have you done for me lately? More importantly, what have you done for me today to save me money, to make my life more interesting, to make my life more affordable? And ad valorem taxes is the way that we fund our schools to a large part, many of our county services. Mm-hmm. Again, a big gold star for you guys. Correct me if I'm wrong, you have reduced the ad valorem tax this year, but it's the third year in a row. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, Paul. We have reduced the ad valorem taxes. not a very long, not a huge amount, but we've kept it on a decrease, and we adjusted our budgets and fine tuned it, and still maintain the services to the taxpayers, and just doing a better job of managing that money is what we're doing.
Well, frankly, as a business person myself, if I saw my ad valorem tax take a huge dump, go down, then I'd start looking around for what services were sacrificed. And I don't want to sacrifice services. The older we get, and you and I are in that same age bracket, we want to have EMS there. We want to have the fire service there when we call. So we don't want a reduction in services, but we definitely always want a reduction in cost. And that's a balancing act.
Absolutely. And there's a very high percentage of that ad valorem tax that goes to our emergency services. That's fire, EMS, and Sheriff's Department. And we have managed to keep a good cash flow to be able to maintain those services. And as times go just further along, we've had the Hurricane Michael, and that was a large expense to the county, and fortunately we had enough money in the coffers that we didn't have to go borrow money. And now we've got the COVID-19, and that hit the county also. So it's been a challenging couple of years here, with the cash flowing on for us.
We are not going to talk about it now because I really think that begs to have its own segment, but you guys were extremely responsive when it came to the emergency management part of dealing with Hurricane Michael. I think that it was almost a dry run for you. As hard as that was to deal with, it was almost appeared from a bystander's point of view to be a dry run for the COVID-19 because you were able to mobilize, again, that much more quickly. You were already in that emergency management mode, and we're going to talk about some of how that went. But one thing that really sticks out to me during the Hurricane Michael is that you couldn't drive around without seeing these fires burning. Smoke was coming from everywhere because we're getting rid of the debris. We're getting rid of the chips, the debris, and everyone was paying a service to do that. And so the people that were operating these pits, and they were capitalists, I'm a capitalist, more power to them, they were making money. But you guys, as a sitting Board of County Commissioners, decided, let's take a look at this and see how we can save money. The way I understand it, you guys made over $1.5 million by doing that service yourself.
Yes, we did, Paul. We had a depleted dirt pit that we saw an opportunity here where we could permit that, put some of these chips in. And with doing so, we captured $1.5 million by doing that, and put that in the coffers too. This board stays ahead of the ball and out front, trying to find everything we can to make money for the county and retain money for the taxpayers.
Incidents like that take away the mystery of how you're able to reduce ad valorem taxes. If you're able to take advantage, to make money, to save money, every opportunity, it has to show up somewhere. And in this case, it probably shows up somewhere along the line in that ad valorem number. You are able to charge the citizens less money because you are able to generate monies from other sources.
Oh, absolutely. You take the health care, $750,000 there, $1.5 million on the CHIP program that we had with FEMA, and those things really count up. It really helps the taxpayers, and that gives us opportunities when we have that cash on hand to go after some more grants to do other things with, and we're also looking at the broadband, that's another grant that's available, and we're pursuing it greatly right now, and it'll take money to invest in the broadband, and some of our paving projects, we've got several major paving projects going on now, and they're not always 100% grant. We have to put matching money up for these. And during the flooding, we had some homes that qualified for a buyout program. Well, the county has to front the money for that, to make that happen, and then we get reimbursed for it. So you have to have money available to make this stuff happen. And that's all taxpayer stuff.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of instances where you guys are fronting money, just like you say, in whether it's FEMA or whatever agency, but then you're having to wait sometimes years to get your money back.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it takes a while. It's a slow process sometimes of regaining your money, and it takes a lot of effort, Paul, to keep up with that during this time, to be sure that all this is in place and the wheel keeps rolling and that money keeps falling where it's supposed to.
I would imagine, just like any business, the better your credit rating is, the better your track record, your history of being able to be a good steward of money, the easier it is to get those loans or grants when you need them. You're judged every day when you apply to agencies for money, so I would imagine that being a good steward of that money, as we're talking about, helps you in that effort.
Oh, absolutely. Anything you go after in a grant or any state monies or federal monies, you are looked at in that way. You know, look at your credit rating, your performance on those grants, and how they were completed and carried out. And, you know, this county has been in debt for years. And our goal is was in 2 years to have this county completely debt-free. But then we had Hurricane Michael come in that kind of slowed that down for us a little bit. But we've still got that in our sights to get this county out of debt here in the next 2 or 3 years.
A couple of things come to mind there. Number one, backing up to the ad valorem, people don't realize that only less than a third of the people in Washington County pay ad valorem taxes. It's based on home ownership, property ownership. And many people live here, they rent or whatever their situation is,
Right.
but they're not paying ad valorem taxes.
Yeah, there's a lot of exemptions that exist that comes down from the state that we don't control as a county, you know. And therefore, it is, it puts us in a fiscally constrained position where we're not collecting a lot of ad valorem money. You know, all these services, they cost a lot of money to provide, but that's what they live off of is ad valorem collections. And therefore, you know, you take coastal counties that have a lot more value on their beaches and stuff, they collect a lot more money ad valorem wise than we do.
Yeah, and then obviously the tourism part of the piece is huge, because if you don't have a beach, and there are very few counties in the Panhandle that don't have a beach, and we're one of them, you just don't have that tourism dollar like they do in Bay County or Okaloosa County, Walton County. You mentioned that you were on track to be debt-free, but then Michael hit, and that 2-year plan probably changed, and probably still trying to morph that out, trying to figure out which way you're going. One thing that I see with the sitting Board of Commissioners, and there are a lot of things that are positive, and just from my 15 years here in the county, but if they existed, I was not aware that there was never been a long-term plan to which was a plan to adhere to that plan. So in other words, you can say I'm going to do this in 5 years, and in 10 years we'll be here, and in 20 years we'll be here. But if every time you have an election it changes, there's no value to it. It seems like, for at least in my recollection, for one of the very first times, you guys are adhering to long-term plans. You can't make a 2-year commitment to be debt-free without sticking to that plan. How is it that you guys are able to work together like that?
Well, this board we all work together real well, and we've got this common goal that we all want to be out of debt, and we want this county in very good financial shape. And when you get it there, then you get more opportunities for grants and other things that you have to use matching monies. In the past, if you didn't have the money to match that grant, you know, it may be a 25% match or 50% match, you lose that opportunity. So when we have monies that we can access as we need them to go after these grants, and that's a long-term process. Like you say, it takes a while for these grants to come to fruition and working them through. And the grant has a process that it has to go through, you know, and it takes a while to get everything in place for that. And it's a board effort. This board really has worked hard in the past 4 years to get to where we're at now. And we still see, you know, we've got some opportunities in the future too.
Yeah, I think that times of challenge, such as COVID-19, such as Hurricane Michael, also open up opportunities. And just as you took advantage of the $1.5 million for the debris pit, you constantly have that. And I think that all goes back to the fact, with very few exceptions, correct me if I'm wrong, almost every member of the board is a businessman, and your county administrator managed a multi-million-dollar business in the past. For right now, I want to talk about a few special projects. You know, there was a big deal made. I had the opportunity to go and shoot photo and video of it when it happened, and this was you guys paving a roads section in Washington County. And people go, well, you know, no big deal. There you see paving going on all the time. But you guys did this for the very first time without external grant monies. Can you talk a little bit about how you made that happen and how maybe that's going to be, you know, part of your future plan?
Yes, we did, Paul. We paved a mile of Orange Hill Highway, the lower end of it, by using our in-house resources to get the road ready for pavement, and then we hired a contractor to come in and pave it. And that was due to us having monies in the coffers that we could pay for this with. You know, in the past, we've been having to rely on grants and matching grants, but due to some of the frugal spending that we've done over the past, we've been able to put some money in the bank. And we've got more projects happening. We've recently just completed Bonnet Pond resurfacing area. That we resurfaced that road. That was with state grant money there, but a lot of these paving grants doesn't cover the total cost. We do have to match part of it, and a lot of times you've got a budget overrun on it that we have to take care of also. So we've got Old Bonifay Road underway now. We've got Cope Road on the way. It's being resurfaced as we speak. I've got, in my district, we've got some major road work going on now. Sunny Hills we'll have here in the very next few weeks, actually, we'll be starting a paving project down there, nearly 4 miles of road there that's badly needed. That is being paid for by the MSBU funds that we collect. And the MSBU board that we've got, that's what they've elected to do, is spend some of their money on paving down there. And the county also is helping some with that also.
Does Steve Heelis head up that MSBU?
Yes, he is, and he is doing a great job with it. The board we have now, that the MSBU board that we've elected to have as an advisory board, they're doing a great job. They work hard, and they've been a great help to the county commissioner board.
I know Steve and his wife and his family from another life, and
Yes.
many years ago, and just good people, hard workers, ex-military. No BS, just get the job done.
He is, and like I say, he works hard and does a great job for us. He really does.
One thing that comes to mind when we say and kind of tout the fact that we're able to pave, to make that kind of road construction without taking grants, leads me to ask, what are the downsides to taking grant money? You said one of them, and that's the fact that if there are overruns, you got to reach into your own pockets, and hopefully you have that money. Right. So I guess you're tied to a different set of regulations, and maybe it curtails some of your autonomy when you do take that grant money? Yes,
it's a grant. You have to structure the work by the language in the grant. It specifically lays it out how you have to do it and all. Like you say, if you take a grant for a boat landing or a park and all, you have to maintain this for a lot of years to their specifications.
Ah, okay.
So, you know, a grant, it may be what most people think is free money up front, where it winds up costing the taxpayer in the long run for maintenance and other things. You know, this county, we spend a lot of money maintaining our parks and boat landings that we have. You know, we've got a lot of them on the creeks and the rivers and the lakes that we have. And it costs a lot of money to keep the garbage picked up, the grass mowed, bathrooms up, you know, and things.
People don't think about what it just costs just to mow.
Absolutely.
The equipment, the capital outlay, buying new equipment, and the employees, and then as we talked about, health benefits, and all that figures into it. Which leads me to the next thing I wanted to sort of touch on, and that's that when the school safety piece became so poignant, when we had the active shooter scenarios, and they just seem to come one on top of another, it's almost been a lull lately. Either that or the news is just not simply covering them anymore, which would be a really sad situation. But Washington County Board of County Commissioners was able to work with the sheriff's office here and fund a couple of SRO positions, school resource officers, that brought up the value of that security in those specific places where those SROs were placed. Can you talk a little bit about that whole thing?
Yes, you know, unfortunately, the shootings that we had in the school system, it brought up an awareness that we needed more SRO officers in our school system. Sheriff came to us, of course, his budget, he had already laid out his budget for that year, and his budget didn't have the money for the two SRO officers that he needed at that time. So Again, we had the money that we could help him do that with, by the management of this board. We had enough money to help him do that. It's about $80,000 for those two. And there again, you never know what's going to be in the future. Just like Hurricane Michael, and the COVID-19, nobody could see any of this coming. But fortunately, we've been able to manage it and keep up with it out of our own pocket right now, and that says something for this board, that we look out after the taxpayer with it.
Yeah, and I think that drilling down, that school resource officer is much more than just a guy with a gun and a badge who's making sure that people are secure. All you have to do is go to a school, and you see those school kids run over and hug that policeman or that sheriff's deputy. They ask him for advice. He becomes a mentor. They only get into that position if the sheriff and his staff deem that person is a role model, and they all are. You can go to any of the schools in Washington County, and so it's much greater than security and law enforcement. It becomes a very huge resource for our students in those schools.
Oh, absolutely, Paul. Our sheriff's department does a great job. They put a big effort into the schools and seeing that the students are safe, and like you say, they are their friends, and they let them know that. The kids love them, and they intermingle with them every day, and they're there to help the kids any way they can. Not always as a law officer, but just be their friend and pat them on the back and intermingle with them. It's a good thing, and like I say, they do a great job.
Yeah, and very seldom do they have to be the bad guy. If you're the good guy often enough in advance, you don't ever have to be that bad guy.
That's exactly right, and that portrays into the students, with these SRO officers being there for them,
Yeah, well, you talk about doing things for money. That is one job you definitely do not do for the paycheck. It amazes me that we get the quality of officers that we do, from the dispatchers to the road crew to the administration. I don't know what Kevin's budget is or how many people he has on staff, but in it itself could be considered a large business. Yes. Anywhere else with the size of their infrastructure, and people don't realize the expenses that they have and what it costs to run that. All they know is they can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I need a deputy over here," and you get a deputy over here.
Absolutely, the sheriff's department is our largest budget in the county, actually. And they do a great job with what they have. They don't always have what they want either, like the rest of us, and they have to live within that budget. But they work hard, very hard at seeing that they provide the taxpayers of this county a good service and look out after them, and when you see them, you need to thank them because they are doing a great job for little pay. They really are.
And even though we're not here to dwell on it, I think that right now we see a huge cooperative effort between the sheriff's office and the police department. Scott Thompson in Chipley, and Kevin Cruz in his sheriff's office, and the mutual aid situation is probably the best it's ever been. They've just got a great working relationship, and that means a lot.
It is. It's great. Even amongst our volunteer fire departments and like you said, the city police, the Washington County Sheriff's Department, everybody works together. If you'll notice, this county is real good at working together. They uphold one another and help everybody they can.
And again, great segue. I want to talk a little bit about fire and EMS. Relatively recently, you guys were able to bring on Rick Kerr on a full-time basis as the fire coordinator. It's no secret, it's been no surprise to anybody that there has been some interagency issues within the fire department. Anytime you have some paid and some volunteers, I've seen it in other places, in other bigger counties. But Rick, or he with his hat of the fire coordinator, seems to have brought a sense of cooperation, a much better mutual aid situation around. Can you talk a little bit about how that all came about?
Well, Rick was hired here off of a grant that was acquired by the board, past board. It was the SAFER grant for the fire departments, and it was a 4-year grant. We had some paid firemen that was on staff during that time, but unfortunately we couldn't maintain that grant after the 4 years ran out. But we did gather up enough money that we could maintain Mr. Rick Kerr in his position as fire coordinator. And he has done just that. He is a great coordinator. He works well with all the volunteer fire departments and the chiefs of each fire department. And there again, the fire departments in this county do a great job, and there again, they work for free, but they love it. They love Washington County, and we love them. But they do a great job.
When your house burns, that is arguably the worst day of your life.
Absolutely.
And there's probably not much that compares to it. So that going to bed at night with the knowledge that there's somebody out there that, like you say, for no pay. And in another life, I was a volunteer fireman, so I get it. But it's hard to believe that people get up at 3 in the morning on an icy cold morning, put on their cold clothes and jump and go warm up that cold truck just to get to your home. And so many times it's either a false alarm or it's a non-issue, but yet those guys can respond every single time. And the overall coordination now being done by Rick Kerr is the ticket to all of that.
Absolutely, and they respond very well, Paul. They do a great job. And like you say, they love Washington County. They love the people in Washington County. And when you see one of the volunteer fire department people, thank them because they do a great job, and it's very little pay to none.
Just like you have mutual aid between the city police department and the county sheriff's office, Vernon has its own fire department.
Yeah.
So you've got to have, as does Wausau, does Caryville, as does Ebro. So everybody has to work together, and the nature of the guys that are volunteers are going to be still in their working years. So it's a chance. If you work construction, you're going to be miles away when that tone goes off. So mutual aid is of the essence. Many times fires are addressed by somebody from a neighboring department because there was nobody at home at that one. That's just the nature of volunteer fire.
Right. Absolutely, Paul. The county funds these fire departments out of their ad valorem tax. We also fund the city of Chipley's fire department, so they do a great job of backing everybody up too. They'll go wherever they're needed, you know. So a lot of people don't understand that's what your ad valorem is spent on is fire departments, EMS, and sheriff's department. That's the biggest portion of it, about 80% of it.
I was totally unaware that the county helped to fund the city of Chipley Fire Department.
Absolutely, we do.
Interesting.
Sure, because they do go outside the city limits.
Oh, no doubt.
They don't hesitate.
No doubt.
And you have probably a bigger pool of volunteers to work from right here because it's concentrated in the city of Chipley. So they have a very good response. And yes, they do work the county even if we have during the hurricane, they worked all over the county, you know.
Yeah.
And all the fire departments just do whatever they have to do.
I want to wrap up this segment talking about EMS a little bit. Recently, you were able to add a third shift with a focus on the Wausau area, but again, the way EMS works is that if an ambulance is on a transport to a hospital, obviously everybody else moves up and covers that same area. You don't let a call go unanswered just because that particular zone is not covered. Talk about what went into deciding and funding that third shift for the Wausau area.
Well, Paul, we needed better coverage on the south end of the county. Mr. Truitt, our EMS director, does a great job. He came to us and saw the need for it, and we did too. So we helped him fund that. And there again, I'll put our EMS department up against anybody's. It's one of the best in the state of Florida, I can tell you. You know, most people don't realize the mechanism that is in place in this county through your sheriff's departments, your EMS, and your fire departments. If you get in trouble in a car accident, have a heart attack, have a fire, any catastrophe that you have, you're going to have somebody headed to you. These people work well together to provide that service. And I can tell you, we have a good system here in the county. People don't realize it until they need it, though.
Well, that's the whole thing. You're exactly right. Unless you have to pull over to allow an ambulance to go by. Most people don't realize that most law enforcement are trained in health management, EMS basics. Most fire personnel obviously are as well. In many counties, the fire department actually runs first response. They don't send out an ambulance, they send a fire truck because generally there's a fire station closer to you than the ambulance station.
That's right.
Most counties have more fire stations than ambulance substations, and in our case, we have that same thing. I would imagine if we get big enough and wealthy enough that eventually someday our fire service will be running that first response for medical. It's just the nature of the beast when you get enough people. I frankly don't look forward to that. It means we're going to have too many people here probably. Yeah. I live here because I love our community. I love our quality of life. Frankly, I love the fact that we're not built up and hugely developed. And if I want that, I can always go to Panama City.
I do too, Paul. I really do appreciate the life we have here. You know, I can remember as a kid, we had one fire truck, City of Chipley. And I remember that Mr. Randall Truitt, he started the EMS back years ago with an old worn out van that he started with, you know, and worked it up to what it is now. His son Randy Truitt now is our EMS director, and they do a great job. So over my lifetime here in Washington County, I've seen it grow a lot. You know, people that come from the outside and come in here, you know, they look at us like, wow, y'all don't have this, y'all don't have that, you know. Well, we have a lot more than what we used to have, and we have a great quality of life, and I am thankful for it, and thankful for the people of this county too, Paul. I love them.
Well, we have a lot more than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
You can drive through Chipley, you can drive through any of the municipalities or the county in general, and it's kind of like a duck on the surface. It's just gliding along, but underneath it's paddling furiously. There's a lot going on. There's some dynamic people in this county. There's some great business minds. There's stuff always going on, but I like the fact that you don't see it all the time, and you can enjoy that peace and quiet. Good fishing, good hunting.
Absolutely. You know, it is amazing at what it takes to run a county government or city government, either one. And like you say, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that nobody really knows about. A lot of hard work, 24 hours a day. You know, and you know, we live in a peaceful community, and I'll assure you, if you need help, we've got a mechanism that can help you from our county government there at the county annex, right on to your sheriff's department, your fire departments, and your EMS. We've got them. Well,
when a hurricane or another weather event hits, you can't have a 9-to-5 mentality. I know for a fact that EOC was manned around the clock for weeks. Our staff was fortunate enough to be able to go down there, experience some of that, document some of that, interview people down there. So during that hurricane period, and again, I can't help but think that hurricane, that whole part that was Hurricane Michael, halfway prepared us for the COVID-19, because when we mobilized for that, your staff just knew exactly what to do.
Well, we have an excellent staff at the EOC. Our EOC director, Ms. Lynn Abel, she does an outstanding job also. And there again, that's something that nobody really sees a lot of, is our EOC department. But like during Hurricane Michael, we were monitoring that storm well before it ever got here. We had things in place before it got here that we didn't have to scramble around and hunt up. We knew it was coming. We knew it was going to be catastrophic. We had our contractors on standby. We had everybody ready to come in and be here when we needed them, and they were. They did a great job responding. That's the reason we got everything up and running as quick as we did, because we had a lot of damage as well as a lot of other counties did, but fortunately we had everything in place and ready to go at that time.
I know it's been said, and I certainly can't argue about it, and it sure appeared for all appearances to be true, that Washington County was probably one of the first counties to truly mobilize, and probably one of the first counties to really get a handle and accomplish what we needed to get done, not comparing to other counties, but because of that staff and having that coordination and mutual aid systems in place, we were able to address that problem fairly quickly.
Yes, we did, Paul. Like I say, it was a period of time that before the hurricane got here that we were getting everything together, and we knew we was going to have it. So we were talking to our bordering counties. You know, we didn't know exactly which area it was going to impact the worst, but the closer it got, the more of that we knew. So we were ready, and everybody worked together, and we done a great job with it, I think.
And not that we're out of the woods yet, but with the COVID-19, it seems like the bulk of the work is done. You're still monitoring, you're still poised in case something happens. But from going out and finding grain alcohol that we could mix our own hand sanitizer with, going out and mobilizing a bunch of folks that were willing to sew masks with the materials that were donated by West Point Home and other people, to regular citizens going online, ordering masks and donating them to the county, and then the county annex being that distribution point for all of that. Again, from an outsider's point of view looking in, it looked like everything went pretty darn smooth.
Well, there again, this shows you how well Washington County can pull together. We had some fantastic people, ladies, men, both sewed masks. You know, we made those available to the public. We had a lot of help from the public, not just the county. The public had a lot of input in this too. And this COVID thing is still new to us. It's not gone. It's still here. We've made changes at the county annex to be able to let the public come in and continue to do business. You'll see some plexiglass up in places to protect you and the employees. And we just asked everybody to be careful from here on out. We don't know how this thing's going to pan out in the future, but we're still optimistic about it. We want everybody to be as safe as they can, you know, and we're still open to some issues with this thing later on, I think.
You be safe as well. You take care of yourself. You're a valued asset to the county in your position. And again, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity.
Our guest today has been Steve Joyner, Washington County Commissioner, District 5. On a regular basis, we try to get the county commissioners to come in, as well as the county administrator. In the future, we've got Rick Kerr, fire coordinator, scheduled to make a visit to talk about his purview. Over time, I think it's very important that you as the public, and it's your tax monies paying for all these services, to know what's going on behind the scenes. I know for one that I learn something with every show, and hopefully you do too. Again, thanks to Steve Joyner for being here today. Stay tuned for whoever is next. You just never know. We are a service of Florida Panhandle Technical College, and we'll be right back.